Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll get started with our September check thrust session. Hopefully, you've had with road trips and cottages and vacation seasons, now that that's come to a close. Hope you enjoyed the summer and are certainly getting back into the swing of things. For us, I think the agenda today, it's going to start with a bit of a recognition. We're going to talk about the luxury tax, where we are and where we're going. We'll talk a little bit about airports and NAV Canada. We'll talk about CBP and simplicity. Sometimes those things don't go together, but in this case, perhaps it will. We'll turn to our VP of Regulatory Affairs, Bob Sinsens, for an update. We'll talk a little bit about our compensation survey, what's new there. We'll also then shift to sort of the issues and events that are going on around us as we look to close out this year. Feel free to put your questions in the chat or Slack or text, whatever is easier for you. But certainly I'll be watching, the team is watching the Zoom chat if you'd like to add anything there. So let's start first with Rudy. On behalf of the association, I've got the difficult task of informing you that Rudy Turing ultimately passed on September 6, 2022. Our thoughts are with Rudy's family in this difficult time. If you're interested, the QR code on the bottom right will take you to Rudy's online obituary. There is a planned celebration of life on October 15th, tentatively scheduled with Initech Exec Air in Montreal. Please stay tuned for the details as they become known. So that online obituary will lead you to some of that information. Also, the association's LinkedIn page has some other colleagues, other industry insiders that are available and writing their condolences. So please feel free to add to them or just review them at your own time. So if you permit me, definitely want to take the time to recognize Rudy's contributions to the CBAA organization, to business aviation as an industry, and certainly on behalf of the association, our thoughts are with Rudy and his family. If you'll permit me, we'll move to the luxury tax, where we've been. Even against the PBO's, the Parliamentary Budget Officer's recommendations, even against the unanimous consent of the House to separate aircraft and commence an economic impact study to truly understand the impact to our industry, this government announced in July that the originally proposed September 1st transition would take place, and it has for the luxury tax. This QR code will take you to the latest letter we drafted to Minister Freeland. So again, here we really try to call out that there's still some work to go. And that kind of takes us into this where we're going, this idea of widening the lanes. When you think what's happening now, the path that we want to undertake is first recognize that with respect to the opposition, there is now new leadership in place with Pierre Poilievre. So this week, we're introducing a letter of congratulations to Mr. Poilievre for his win. What I would also add is that Melissa Lantsman, who was and maybe will be, well, remains to be seen, she was the opposition critic for transport with the Conservatives. She's now the co-deputy leader in the Conservative Party. Now, why do I bring this up? Well, certainly our efforts with the Conservatives about opposing the luxury tax and doing everything we can to repeal it are going to be on full scale. So the relationship that we've built in this case with this party will continue, and we're going to continue to educate the other opposition parties, in particular the NDP and the Bloc, about this impact of luxury tax to Canadian jobs. So we're definitely going, if you reference that letter before, especially to Minister Freeland, this flying blindly forward, our job with luxury tax is going to be really to demonstrate what's happening with Canadian jobs. And an interesting note with respect to this luxury tax is just the potential impact as we think about the 703 and 704 in flight and duty time. Well, again, one of the unintended consequences of this thing is to understand the relationship that, say, an OEM has with the simulator companies, let's say both Flight Safety and CAE. If you buy a brand new aircraft, there is a relationship between those providers and the OEM that says, hey, look, you bought a brand new airframe, you can get in for some training in order to fly this new airframe. The problem, of course, is that if you're buying an aircraft, if you have this luxury tax and it's impacting your decision to buy an airplane, now you're buying, say, not that new airplane, and now you're facing something like 12 to 18 months for simulator sessions. And you're either on hold for that or you're living with a suitcase packed so that maybe you get a call on a Saturday to show up for a sim on Monday. So one of the unintended consequences, never mind and leave aside just for a moment the government's desire on sort of the environmental initiatives and the inability then to acquire the latest and greatest aircraft, never mind the safety benefits, the engine efficiencies, all that stuff. Just this issue alone is going to expose some of the challenges that we have. And I'm sure Bob will talk a little bit to that when his time comes up about this flight and duty time and its change. So definitely luxury tax. The theme here is about widening the lanes. And of course, I just love the Seinfeld episode where Kramer decides to do just that. So we're going to continue with airports and NAV Canada. And specifically here, I want to address the efforts, our efforts with the GTAA and NAV Canada. And I want to thank those that I've seen. I've seen BC Campbell, on there, but other members of our YYZ Airport Committee who have taken the time over these last number of weeks to join in the calls that we've set up in collaboration with the Airport Authority and often at times separately with NAV Canada. And, one of the interesting things here is just to highlight, how the work of the association is often done behind the scenes. We're busy both. We were very deliberate in our efforts to, one, communicate directly with GTAA and separately directly with NAV Canada in order to determine what the true capacity constraints were at the airport. So if you're not familiar or if you don't operate to Pearson with any sort of frequency, there's been quite a bit of effort. There was some runway construction. The GTAA with its slot program was putting in additional restrictions. We were successful in, one, putting off hard cap limits on business aviation's movements within the airport. And most recently, we've been successful in really ensuring that NAV Canada, their service level at Toronto Pearson, in this case, was better than the 80 slots that GTA was planning. So now, and literally within the last week and a half, NAV Canada committed to a 90 movements per hour. So is our work done here? Absolutely not. We're going to focus on this idea of first principles, focus on what is right versus who is right. 14% of the S&P 500 flies in and out of Pearson. And this kind of yo-yo, let's say, with the airport and access needs to be resolved. And so to those that are on that airport committee, to you, our operators that are flying to that airport, we're committed to make sure that access at Toronto not only is just equitable, but let's call it seamless and reflects the way our industry flies, the very nature of it. And again, one of the highlights that's come out of this is really kind of driving with data, recognizing that basically nobody that operates at Pearson right now is on time. So even the enforcement of the slots, and we had initially it was a hard cap and a wide window, it was something like from 3 till 10 p.m. We narrowed that, we got rid of the hard caps, and the on-time performance, because everybody basically 2 or 3 aircraft out of 10 are arriving on time. There's no ability for the airport to enforce this because of these kind of challenges. So going forward, it's absolutely going to be an issue. We're going to take some of the learnings that we have here to Vancouver. For those that don't know, 2024, so not next year, but the year after, the North Runway at Vancouver is scheduled to go down for construction. So some of you have reached out. I think I saw Dave Smith. Yeah, Dave, as an example, just because I saw your name, Dave, I know you've reached out on the Vancouver. We're connecting with some of our FBOs there, but I think it's October 3rd. I'll be in Vancouver talking to the Airport Authority about how we draft a program that takes learning lessons both from Montreal and from Toronto to ensure that whatever construction efforts and how that impacts airspace in 2024, again, tries to make it seamless to access that airport. So certainly Vancouver is going to be key. Let's go to CBP and simplicity. So this is more of a quick announcement. And again, talking about, simplification. This may benefit you or your passengers in the back of the aircraft, especially for travel to the United States. So as of August 30th, both Toronto and Montreal went live with the CBP mobile passport control. September 19th, we'll see Vancouver added to the list. So that's what we have right now in terms of airports in Canada. But what you're doing, or what you're seeing with this essentially, is that you're using the app to answer the questions, and they're going to streamline your entry with a separate lane for sort of that to interface with CBP officers. One thing to note is that pre-approval, like Global Entry or Nexus, is not required. each account can basically build in 12 user profiles. So perhaps if you're traveling with family and it's like vacation or something like that, or if you're an exec assistant or something like that, and you want to make it a little bit easier, you could technically do that. We could have 12 profiles added to that one user account. So in many ways, this will help solve some of the challenges. Like I know Toronto is a big hub, of course, as you all do, but that interface between maybe a connecting flight somewhere in Canada, land in Toronto, that interface and that time in front of CBP is often the issue. And in this case here, this is going to help streamline that process. So it's like ArriveCAN, but unlike ArriveCAN, it's not mandatory. So this mobile passport control, I think will be a good thing. And if you haven't heard of it, I'd certainly encourage you to get educated about it. That QR code will take you to the CBP site. You can learn a little bit more about it, where to download it, et cetera, et cetera. On that note, though, let's talk about CBSA. This note about CanPass, and specifically CanPass Corporate, I can say that we are working with CBSA on their restart efforts, and more specifically, this CanPass Corporate, a program that's designed to streamline border entry with trusted travelers, is causing strife. You've seen it in our Slack channel. People have been talking about calling en route. I added here the QR code to the CanPass Corporate Aircraft program, as a highlight. It does require a call. It's for passenger counts up to 15, which includes the crew. So if it's just 2, technically it's 13 passengers, and up to 4 of the folks in the back, no more than 4 cannot be registered with the CanPass Corporate program. So we are working with CBSA leadership and looking into the issue about, let's call it interpretation by officers. And this has always been a challenge because officers, the men and women of CBSA, do have quite a bit of control of that experience. And so they are looking into the issue right now, and we are driving them to get to this. When you look at this QR code, exactly as the program was designed. It's one phone call, you arrive at your destination. If you've been reporting your time diligently and no one's there, you just proceed. So this, we're looking into that. And I think in the end, what's happening here is some of these legacy elements that have spun up as a result of COVID. And also through the summer here, we've had a lot of new agents with CBSA, the university sort of, what do they call it, co-op programs. That's been a part of it, but CBSA and the association are committed to getting this thing done right. And Dave, I did see your Slack comment in the morning. I do believe it is that Slack legacy. So absolutely something that we're committed here on CanPass Corporate. It's interesting, they limited it to CanPass Air. So the only thing that's left is the 2, CanPass Corporate Aircraft and CanPass Private Aircraft. And for generally our purposes, this CanPass Corporate Aircraft is the program that you all are likely to interface with. So let's go then to the regulatory gears, and perhaps I'll turn my my slide deck off here, but I wanted to introduce, of course, Bob Sinsens, your VP of Regulatory Affairs. So Bob, perhaps if we could turn it over to you for your update.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't have any slides to present, but before I start, I just wanted to state that I'm very pleased to have joined the CBAA and try to assist as best as I can using my past transport and industry knowledge. But at first, I could play the new player game, so I may ask a lot of questions before you actually get to your answer. Anyway, just as a bit of an update today, just a few things, and I think I want to take this first opportunity to more learn from yourselves over time of issues you may have, and those have already started coming in. The first thing, you've probably all seen the CARAC announcement yesterday that Nicholas Robinson, DG Civil Aviation, is leaving his position. And yes, it is a very sad change that's occurring. Nick has been a good benefit for transport, I think. He has listened, he has tried to learn, especially given his non-aviation background. I think industry has done fairly well with him. I am pleased to say that he is not leaving transport. He has essentially been promoted to the position of Associate Assistant Deputy Minister. So his influence will be there still in a different sense. Aaron McCrory has moved on and he's joined CBSA in another role. With respect to simulator availability that Anthony's already spoke to, and flight and duty time relationship, So essentially at this point, you probably saw about a week or so ago, the CBAA weekly note that we were seeking information on any of you that are having access issues to simulators, especially time delays or suffering the backlogs. I did see one note come in that next year there'd be 25 pilots having to get through simulators, and there was no availability in the short term. So having that information through the member support line, which will get back to me, is very important. And as Anthony said, there's a relationship to flight and duty time, because as it starts getting implemented in December, you will be looking for more folks potentially, or different folks to be doing things. And if they can't get their simulator time, that will cause some issues. I have briefed TC on the issue. They are fully aware, but however, the reason we're asking for data is we have to give them an idea of scope and what it means. They've already told me that they have a willingness to reuse the exemption that was used during the height of the pandemic on the simulators, but some of the conditions they're talking about may not be good for us. So again, the data is very important. What we're also setting up is a brainstorming session that we plan to do in conjunction with the NBAA, because they're going to be they're already suffering the simulator issue. And I'm not sure if some of you follow the NBAA releases, but FAA is going forward with Part 91 and Part 135 flight and duty times also. Timelines I'm not sure of yet. I didn't read that deep, but it's coming. So this brainstorming session would be held. It would be a 1 or 2 meeting event where the group would be looking at industry-based solutions that they think would help, and that we could put together with our own ideas and the discussions with TC to try to get to some solutions, both short and longer term. So if you have any interest in that, you can pop your interest through the member support or to me directly, and we can go from there. Merlin, my predecessor, as you know him well, has already provided a few ideas of who could that be. But before I tap on their shoulders, I'd like to have an opportunity to let all of you consider this. The other thing is that NAV Canada has been approaching various associations and some operators to help them develop key performance indicators. At the face of it, that is a very good thing, that for us to tell them what we think would be good to get from them as a service and what their key performance. But the fact that they were approaching everybody separately was a bit of a concern, since it's almost like a divide and conquer thing. So our colleagues at COPA have taken the lead in trying to put together a multi-association working group to develop these jointly and develop one set of KPIs for all of from at least the industry participants that would be there, and present those to NAVCAN. Here again, I'd be seeking 1 or 2 members of the industry that'd be interested in participating. Right now, we're just at the cusp of this discussion, and we'll be developing some terms of reference. We'll be sharing those with you, likely through Slack. And that will give you an idea of if this is down the lane and a lane that you're interested in participating in. And again, here I have a few names that I may consider approaching, but for now, I'll leave this with you as a note, and I'll be following up later on. Another piece of information is Environment Canada had been working on the environmental action plan. The draft is completed. Anthony signed the CBAA box on the report. It is now making its way through ministerial level approvals. And as soon as it's completed, we will get a copy and we'll post it for everybody's information. The action plan is multivariate, industry proposals for environmental improvements, government proposals, going from technical to operational aspects. The big one will be the fuel, I think, aspect. Industry has been very loud in indicating that they're very supportive of this. However, there has to be supply. And the supply is very much also a piece on the industry side, on the government side, to make sure that there is availability. So they understood that, and they're going to be working with that. On a related note, Anthony did note to me the other day that BC Fuels has delayed their implementation by a year, and that I guess they want to go through some more consultation to ensure they have more voices heard. So Anthony, maybe after I'm done, if you want to add anything to that, because that's a new one for me, we can take some more details on that one. Just a piece of information for those of you who've been waiting for the new training proficiency exemption, the renewal that I also put on Slack that would be coming. I've been advised that it will be delayed to early 2023. They've realized that the AC is not ready, and they're just reworking it. And I think that's important that we have a good AC to work with. And the other thing, TC itself is undergoing its own audit right now from ICAO, and is diverting some resources to answer the questions. There's 75 different questions they have to answer. And as told to me by one of my old colleagues there, each question could take months to answer, but they got to bring it down to hours. So it's a big job. So I'm just here. I'm going to stop for a few minutes, pass it to Ed to provide a quick short brief on latest hazards, and I'll come back and just do a quick closeout. Ed?
Thank you very much, Bob and Anthony, for the opportunity to briefly talk about the Trends and Hazards report that just came out. I'm just going to go to screen share here so I can share my screen. Let me know, is that sharing properly?
It is now. We've got it, Ted.
Okay, good. Okay, so this is the most recent issue of the Trends and Hazards report. And I would like to highlight a couple of items on there. The first one here is simply an acknowledgement that we're coming out of a disruptive period, and anytime there is a transition from a disruptive period to a normal period, that in itself tends to create what is referred to as a hazardous situation where all kinds of things can happen. And so we would like to draw everyone's attention to that, be on the lookout, and basically fly by the numbers, keep doing the things that we know that work, and not get distracted by everything else. The next item I want to point out is just down here. The NAB is one of the areas that's in the CBA RMS where we'd like to get the information firsthand. Most of the information in the reports now comes from other more independent and I would suggest detached distance sources. The NAD is what the CBA members put in there, and so we'd like to look at that, and I will not miss any opportunity to encourage everyone to participate and submit reports there. Let's go to the second page. In case somebody looked at this might look alarming here on the 2021-22 trends, because all except for these three are pointing up, and it looks like incidents are sharply on the rise. I would like to explain that that is simply a function of these are all based on raw numbers. It is not baselined, it is not normalized to any baseline. And so what that simply means is if, for example, there are 5 incidents of course deviation per 100 hours of flying, if the numbers if the flying doubles, then the number will double too. And this just reflects that reality. It is not necessarily an indication that things are worse. In fact, in some cases, the rate could actually be lower, but because the absolute number is up, this will still point up. So what is required is there to look at where this fits into your operational profile, which ones reflect incidents that have occurred in your operation, and then base your risk analysis on that. The last chart on the back here, occurrences per 10,000 flights. So in contrast to the chart that we just looked at, these numbers have been normalized. So every incident is per 10,000 flights. And all this is telling us that right now, as of this last report, Moncton, the likelihood of anyone being involved or in part of an incident of any kind is the highest in Moncton, followed by Toronto and Montreal. And what that simply means is that when compared to Winnipeg, Moncton is almost 3 times more likely if you fly there to have be part of an incident. Finally, if there's anybody who wants to participate or is interested in promoting aviation safety, if you have any feedback, comments, or questions related to this report, please send them to me. And my email address is right on the report. And with that, I will turn off my screen share and back to you, Bob.
Thank you very much, Ed. Very much appreciated. Just as a piece of information, given the work that Ed does on the Hazard and Trends report, Ed will be also taking over the analysis of reports that are submitted in NADS. In the past, Merlin had been doing those, and given the type of work that Ed does after the fact, personally, I believe it is advantages for him to see the reports as they come in, analyze them, and have an opportunity to discuss with the submitter, if needed, of the report to get better understanding and then towards improving our NAD and the NAD in the long term also. And on that, we will have more to offer as to what we think we should be doing to improve the system, also improve access or increase access. So that will be there. So I'm going to stop there, Anthony. If there are questions, I'm certainly willing to take them later on or by email or Slack. But again, pleased to have met those of you on the line, and I'll talk to you at a later date. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Bob. And maybe while I got you, there was a question, and thanks to you both. So for both Bob and Ed, the briefing was substantive, some great information. One of the things I'd also highlight with Bob, your first announcement with Nick leaving, Andy is now the interim DG. We've had great relationships with Andy in the past. We were able to work with that whole organization, but at least there's a continuation of some of the efforts that we've had with TC. So that's a good story as well. And Ed, the report on Moncton versus, this is the value of that database, being able to understand sort of the ins and the outs. But Bob, while we have you, just quickly, and I think you might have went off camera. I think there might have been somebody come in, but it's regards to the training to proficiency renewal. Will there be any substantive changes to the program? BC's asked. It could be simpler. So if you get a chance, I don't know if you had, I know you've come off and you're muted right now. We'll see what the developments. If not, he's going to be right back and we'll just go to me. And because I got a question about compensation. So let's go right to that. So by the way, I don't know if you've noticed, but the artwork that I've had in the background has been courtesy of OpenAI and DALL-E. It's a GPT-3, a machine learning. So you literally write in this case, it was worker looking at mirror in I think it was oil painting. And so in this case, if you see in the very bottom right of those images, that little red, yellow, green, blue, this is all DALL-E. So for me, where I like to use a lot of images, this has been a fun little experiment in drafting things. So looking into the mirror and talking about compensation, thanks to those members who completed the survey, we had 62 respondents. So we had both members that had completed the survey in the past in 2019. Those about 57% of the respondents were return. And then the balance were new members participating and adding their feedback. One of the comments, one is a direct message to me. Dave, on the salary survey side of things, goalposts moving rapidly. Is it possible to speed up the process? And that's absolutely something we want to do. So this journey of the compensation survey, we've undertaken. BC asked a question about trying to look at specific results, and we are continuing down this road of making the report simpler. One of the things you'll note is that if you completed the survey and when you've received it, we go immediately into sort of that executive summary and then right into the salary table so that you get a sense of what it was. And we even staged the report, and one, to capture as many members as we could to make this a fulsome response. And then two, bring forward first, the phase one was here's the compensation. And then phase two was compensation plus those HR secondary benefits. So all of that fits together. So this document has taken the journey. I wanted to highlight a couple points, and it goes to Dave, your comment about some of the changes. We definitely want to keep an eye on this. The NBAA released their survey. We're showing from 2019 about an average of a 16% average difference between the results in 19 and 22. NBAA reported, I think it was 13% as a difference. So it's good to see some alignment. So there's definitely some value in looking at the 22 study versus 19. And lastly, of course, corporate versus airline and charter, where folks may consider, ultimately the intent and why we want to make this super simple is as you look to attract and retain the talent that we need in our industry. Our hope is that we continually refine the CBAA compensation survey with your support to make sure that you've got timely information. We're absolutely on that with InterVistas, in this case, our vendor provider. So we are going to make some continued changes to that, and we want to take in your input, and definitely that piece about getting it timely, I think, is going to be important. I want to take a highlight just to bring up Jared's point about the simulators. I know this goes back to that conversation we had a little bit about luxury tax and to Bob's about flight and duty times, and Air Sprint being short 25 plus spots in 2023 is a pretty significant shortfall. So this definitely highlights some of the challenges that we're going. So Bob, now that I see you back on, I'll go back to that question from BC. I know Ed's responded as well, but the training to proficiency renewal, any substantive changes to the program, how do you view this, let's say, when they re-look at this in 2023?
Well, I think as Ed says, they've put in, and I've also discussed it with Merlin, everything that, well, I'll make it short. The change will be positive, and it will make things better. It incorporates pretty much everything that was sought after for CBAA.
Always a good story. Perfect. Yeah. Great. So let's go back then to sharing the screen. So then I wanted to just kind of move into sort of industry events, things on the move. Here's again another Dali painting, a little cyberpunk sort of suitcase on the roll. Of course, the NBAA's got their event October 18th to 20th in Orlando. So the NBAA base show takes place. So if you're in the area, if you're interested, that's something to consider. Also, October 27th in Montreal, the Aviation Hall of Fame induction ceremony dinner. This QR code will send you to the details. They'll be celebrating 8 inductees. Just some that are of relevance, Russ Payson and Marc Perron, to just name 2 of the 8 that are listed there, will be inducted in Montreal. So if you find yourself looking to join the event, I think that'll be worthwhile. Last image here about this Calgary skyline in a sort of cool synthwave kind of look. The commencement of our November chapter meetings. So one of the things we wanted to end up doing is leading up to the November chapter meetings, I'm going to be in not only talking with the airport authority, so there are other airports that we are engaged with, both on programs about access and then also programs about de-icing. So leading up to that, I'm scheduling some direct meetings, both with our members, you, and then, excuse me, the airport authorities. That's going to lead up to our November sort of year-end chapter meetings. So if you recall, COVID certainly concluded those in-person. November will be the resumption of those in-person chapter meetings. We're going to frame that as sort of our year-end event, as it's done in the past. So stay tuned for the details. Lindsay and Anita are on the line. The team will be here. We'll be setting up those dates, talking to our chapter champions, and coordinating to make sure that we can get together before the year end. Last on this point is just, again, that marker, that July 11 through 13 in Calgary, the CBAA's next convention with our partners at SunWest. So it'll be a great event there. So with, let's see here now, with 20 minutes to the hour, I wanted to look and see first if there's any questions in the chat. I'm not seeing, apart from the comments that we've seen, anything else, but I'd leave it to you then now. If you've got any questions, feel free to either sort of raise a hand, come off mute, go into the chat. And we'll take a moment to just double check and see if there's anything else. Otherwise, we'll return back a little bit of time to your calendars. While I'm looking and going through, nothing that I would say. So what I'd probably just end up closing on is that efforts of widening the lane. Why? Well, when the government returns back to the House, which is September 20th, so the 19th has now been declared a federal holiday in Canada. Our efforts with our partners, both at H&K, with the federal government, are going to be really tasked with, now that in the example of luxury tax, that we start to widen the lane. We start to understand and really impress upon them that these jobs, our jobs, Canadian jobs, are being impacted by this decision, that continuing this flying blindly approach is not one that either the PBO or the House called for. That's going to be an issue we're going to contend with. We are absolutely pushing this issue of training, the cycles and the length of time and how that impacts flight and duty time. And as Bob already alluded to, there is a willingness, I think, on an individual level. We're not going to get a broad-based exemption, let's say. So we need to demonstrate that, this exigent circumstance, this thing that was out of our control, COVID, has led us down this road where training is now crazy to get. And so if you're trying to hire and staff up for those positions, it's increasingly super difficult. So we're going to definitely press on that. And last is that point about the environment. These are still things that, I mean, if you've seen in recent weeks, France, for instance, has taken some approach in saying they want to ban business aviation. So again, it's about the education. I mean, we all know that, sure, business aviation globally is basically 3% of global emissions. And we're but a tiny fraction, business aviation, of that total. But still, we need to keep pressing. And as Bob alluded to with our let's call it our support of environmental initiatives. In order for our industry to achieve success, there is a requirement that we've put on the government. In other words, you need to enable. I've always used a line with government that their job is to create incentives to do the right thing, and then incentives for people to recognize not to do the things that we all agree they shouldn't be doing. And in this case, support of, say, sustainable aviation fuel, the recognition that luxury tax will have an impact, not just on our ability to use the latest and greatest for safety improvements, but our ability to leverage those design enhancements for environmental wins and efficiency. So those things, those three areas are going to be buckets that we're going to really put a lot of focus on as we kind of get into this back half of 2022. So with that said, I guess no other questions. I'd encourage you to reach out if you've got any. If you want to reach out to Bob, feel free to reach out to him directly. Member support, the team will be able to answer any sort of question you got, whether it's something related to administration to the CBAA or concerns you've got about an airport. Feel free to reach out to us. We're available to you. So with that, I'll return, let's say, 17 minutes back to your calendar. And thanks to each of you for your participation today. And we'll be chatting real soon. Thanks, everyone.